It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Did you watch every NHL game last night? Of course not. That's impossible. So Locked On brings you Locked On Game-to-Game NHL. With Locked On Game-to-Game NHL, we take you inside every arena to every game and give you the Locked On local experts insight. And by the end, it's as though you were at every game. Find Locked On Game-to-Game NHL on the Locked On NHL feed and follow today. Locked On Game-to-Game NHL, taking you to every arena for every game with the local experts. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back, everybody, to your source for fantasy hockey news, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, big time Wednesday edition with all of the fantasy breakdowns that you need from the best under the radar trades from the trade deadline to all of the injury news and big time bets that you need. Let's get right to it. Thank you for joining us. Happy Hump Day.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? And welcome back to your source for fantasy hockey and degenerate gambling breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Today, again, solo with your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Thank you for riding with us through Steele's hiatus. We are back in another big way Wednesday. A lot to get to on today's episode. I want to talk about the Ryan O'Reilly news. I haven't been able to. I want to talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning. I want to talk a lot about some of these under-the-radar trade deadline moves that have already started to pay off in a big way for a number of clubs across the NHL, and that means fantasy implications for your team. Victor Hedman avoids big-time injury. The New York Rangers are shuffling the deck on the power play units, and that is going to leave a lot of awesome opportunities for fantasy GMs to make some awesome moves. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. People, thank you very much over the last few days riding with me solo. This is a two-man team. Steele and I do it together, offering you up all the breakdowns and fantasy advice and news that you need. I'm back for one more. My boy Steele will be with me for tomorrow's episode, but there's a lot to get to today. So let's get to it. I wasn't able to mention Ryan O'Reilly and the Toronto Maple Leafs the other day on the episode that we missed, but Ryan O'Reilly was brought into the Toronto Maple Leafs to try and instill something a little bit different on this Toronto Maple Leafs club. And now all of a sudden, not only are the Leafs starting to be a bit concerning with their performances on the ice, especially against some of these weaker teams in the NHL, and now they've done that all season long with ugly losses to Arizona Coyotes, Vancouver Canucks, and otherwise. But the Ryan O'Reilly injury, he was brought on to change the mantra, to change the energy in that dressing room. Now he's out for 4 weeks. He has finger surgery. We know for sure this guy is a warrior. Maybe he can come back a little sooner. He could be ready for the playoffs, but realistically, this just opens up some opportunities in the Toronto top six, especially with Johnny T being banged up as well, people. Now you have to pay attention to these situations. Look, fantasy hockey playoffs are right around the corner. Depending on your league, it could only be a few weeks away. And you really just have to be capitalizing on these opportunities, whether you like the names or not. So when you start to look at what is going to be thrown out there for Sheldon Keefe and this Toronto Maple Leafs unit, who have had their struggles for sure, they will continue to score goals. And I just think there's some value here. Alexander Kerfoot is going to get looks with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. I don't need to break this down any further, people. If you need some left wing or winger or forward help, taking a look at Alex Kerfoot is where you need to start. Sam Lafferty is going to get slotted up that lineup. Callie Jarnkrok is going to get slided up that lineup in Toronto. These are the names, most especially Kerfoot, because we know Sheldon Keefe has this everlasting confidence in Alex Kerfoot for some reason. These are some of the opportunities that we have to pounce on. Let me keep talking about these situations, though, that might make or break you. Victor Hedman, I want to get to that. The New York Rangers, Gerard Gallant shuffling the power play lineups. That's important. Under the radar trade deadline moves that are going to make an impact. I'm getting there too. Big time bets. Baby, it's another full jam-packed solo episode. I was going to try and keep it short and sweet. It might be tricky. Look, Svechnikov bumps Hedman into the boards, into the ice, and then he slides in. We know Victor Hedman has lost some of his ice time to Mikhail Sergachev for how good he's been. And maybe because of how, quote-unquote, disappointing Victor Hedman has been, he still logs almost the most ice time in the NHL of any player on there. Like, I think that's just the indicative stat of how important he is for this Tampa Bay Lightning success. And he still brings a ton of fantasy value. And the way that he went into the boards over the weekend, you thought this Tampa Bay Lightning team has been rough over the past number of games, and now it's starting to get a bit concerning. The way that they're losing games, the Tampa Bay Lightning are 2-5-3 over their last 10, and this Victor Hedman situation is like their first bit of positive news in the past couple of weeks, because it looked like he could have been out for a while. What I wanted to come on here and say about the Tampa Bay Lightning is, no, I wouldn't bail on the fantasy pieces yet, but you have to keep an eye on what's going on. They're talking about rifts with the coach, unhappiness there. I don't know how much we want to buy into that, but these are the situations you got to keep it tapped to. Very quickly, before we get to everything else on today's episode, I saw a little tweet out there today, people, about Gerard Gallant trying to shuffle things up. The Rangers haven't been good over their last, few games. 4-5-1 over their last 10, 2 straight ugly losses. They need to be better. And the most you would say, hey, Flip, 35 wins, 19 losses this season. They're having a great year. Yeah, they are, but the Eastern Conference has gone beast mode. And the Metro is also just, aside from Boston, I say the Metro is just the toast of the entire league. Carolina and New Jersey and the Rangers, they have to be better. And Gerard Gallant, I love Gerard Gallant. So when I see him making big-time shuffles, I had to come on to the fantasy podcast and say, when I see my man Gallant shuffling up the power play units, and let me bring up what those units will be. I know I have the tab somewhere, people. I know I have the tab somewhere. And listen, this is where we need to pounce on this opportunity. Power play 1, Fox, Panarin, Trocheck, Kane, and Lafreniere. So a Lafreniere addition over these next few days makes so much sense for me. Power play 2, Trouba, Zibanejad, Tarasenko, Kreider, and again, the guy who I think you guys should be going out there, Philip Chytil. So Chytil and Lafreniere are now back in getting major looks to balance out these top power play units, playing with so many good players. Oh my goodness, you got to go out there and take a look at some of these options, because right now you're running out of chances. If you're not the 1 or 2 teams in the running for money in your fantasy league, you got to make this happen for yourself. Fantasy GMs, Lafreniere, Philip Chytil, this is where you want to go. We are going to go to my top under the radar fantasy hockey trade deadline moves. We're going to get to big time bets. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel and FanDuel Sportsbook. And we've hit the midway point of the NBA season. It's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet for $1,000, up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't bang. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And you can bet on everything from the money line to the point spread to threes drained, and that's just getting started. You can build your own same game parlay, which lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout. making you more money. You can hit the first to 10, first to 20. Who wins the tip? Who gets a triple-double? Who gets a double-double? And everything in between. Don't miss your chance for your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
I just learned Discover credit cards do something pretty awesome. At the end of your first year, they automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right, everything you earned doubled. All the cash back from eating at your favorite soup dumpling restaurant doubled. All the cash back from the trip where you sort of learned how to snowboard also doubled. And the best part, you don't have to do anything ridiculous to get it. Nope, Discover does it automatically. Seriously though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match.
Thank you for tuning in to Wednesday's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast and for making us your first listen every single day. This is the podcast you want people to be tuned into over the next number of weeks and even throughout the summer. Fantasy breakdowns, betting breakdowns, dynasty, keeper, everything that you need for fantasy hockey. It's right here. Thank you for all of that support, and make sure you smash that subscribe button on YouTube if you're out there following, or if you're on Spotify or Apple, you know what to do. 5 stars, baby. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. We're here for you. Speaking of which, I had to take a look at some of these trades so far, people. Top under the radar trade deadline moves that I've looked at over the past number of days. And, Timo Meier was on the move. We knew this. We knew some of these big-time names were out there, the Ryan O'Reillys of the world, and teams made their moves. And there was a number of them that we expected. Even some of these moves like John Klingberg we kind of expected. But when I go out there and look at some of these additions that teams have made that are already starting to pay off, I just wanted to come out here and take a look at them, because not only do I think is it worth it from a fantasy perspective to consider some of these players, depending on the format, depending on where you're at, but considering how hot they are already, I would definitely be considering going out there and taking a look. Number one, Ivan Barbashev fitting in with the Vegas Golden Knights, putting up points. I wasn't sure about this move just because of we knew O'Reilly, we knew Tarasenko. Those made sense. But the Barbashev, he was a little bit more under the radar for me, and he's already starting to pay off and bring some depth and offensive punch to the Vegas Golden Knights. That's where I would start with this list, and that's where, honestly, if you're poking around for a little bit of forward depth, go ahead and take a look at Barbashev, who's going to start to get a real good look in that top 6 in Vegas. Vegas still holding it down with the division spot. You cannot deny it. Honestly, my list rounds out. I'm going to throw it out very quickly. Niederreiter, capitalizing on top power play time in Winnipeg, capitalizing on some good situations. So that's Barbashev and Niederreiter. But the 3 most tantalizing situations for me, and situations where I think you can continue to get value with the players that have just made moves, it's in 3 guys named Rasmus Sandin, Domi, Gostisbehere. And I'll start with Gostisbehere. And I said this last week when he was traded to the Carolina Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes have a very balanced and responsible defensive unit. And they are a stingy team that allows some of the least shots overall, and goals against this season. Yes, they've had Kochetkov, Anderson, and Ranta. And I would say that if you're talking about trios, not only duos, those are the top. That's the top trio in NHL goaltending. Anyway, Gostisbehere comes to this defensively sound unit, and now he can go back to his days of scoring 17 goals, 13 goals, and 52 assists, 51 points for the Arizona Coyotes last year, and he's already put up 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists in his first 2 games with the Carolina Hurricanes. Needed to talk about Shane Gostisbehere and what I think he's going to continue to do. I said this brings the freedom for him to be that offensive unit that he can be, and I think it's going to continue to happen. Now, Max Domi. a lot of rumors were going around about Domi. Does he go? Does he stay? I know in games he has only one goal. He's getting more minutes. He is getting some shots on net. I think Max Domi is the type of player that goes to Dallas, he goes from the Chicago Blackhawks, who were arguably the worst team in the league. I know they're putting up wins lately, but now he goes into the mix. He gets to play with Tyler Seguin and Mason Marchment. I know he was getting looks with Patrick Kane, but I really like this sneaky little third line, if you want to call it the third line, for the Dallas Stars. Mason Marchment has also been on a bit of a heater, picking up Mason Marchment, Max Domi, Tyler Seguin. I think, given how good overall Dallas has been this year, little Dallas tangent, that line is definitely worth a look for me. I know I need Steele here to throw this back at me. I might be on a little tangent. I might be off the mark, but I think Mason Marchment, Max Domi, and Tyler Seguin are going to form a formidable third line. Mason Marchment maybe having a disappointing year, but Max Domi could be that little injection of energy that he needs. And very lastly, I know I come on this show and I give us our props. I have to give us our credit when we're accurate. But when I saw Rasmus Sandin get moved, a first-round draft pick, by the way, from the Toronto Maple Leafs, buried behind a lot of veteran talent, and he's an offensive guy. The Toronto Maple Leafs don't need an offensive D-man. I just saw this opportunity on this Washington Capitals team, and I'm not going to say that I was that bold to come out and say he's going to get 5 points over his first 2 games. But I am confident enough to say, when you look back at the episodes, people, I would have gonna go on and said, take a shot on Rasmus Sandin because I love this opportunity. Now, 1 goal, 4 assists in his first 2 games. He's up to now over and averaging 23 minutes of ice time per game. If you need a little love with your defensive crew, Rasmus Sandin, under the radar trade deadline moves: Sandin, Domi, Barbashev, Gostisbehere, Niederreiter. Yeah, maybe even Dmitry Orlov. None of these moves were the big, sexy Timo Meier, Jacob Chytil, Ryan O'Reilly moves or otherwise, and they're already paying dividends for their teams. They're already proving that those were the right things to do production-wise for those clubs. And if I'm a fantasy GM at this point in the season, you got to be jumping on these chances to ride a hot hand, to ride a good situation, or both. And honestly, right now, I know I don't have the percentages for those players, but Sandin, Domi, Barbashev, even maybe not Gostisbehere, maybe Niederreiter as well. No, Niederreiter should be out there. They're going to be out there, and you can probably still go out there and add waiver wire. Fantasy hockey playoffs right around the corner. So tighten up, people, and make sure you are getting this money. We are going to get to big time bets. Thank you for riding with us for another solo episode. Steele is back tomorrow. We have to talk about our friends at Built Bar, because you know why? They are bringing that fire. They are bringing the deliciousness from Built. And we can't do these episodes without our friends from Built and Built.com. It's a delicious treat. If you don't want all the fat and calories, you got to get a Built Bar. And it is the best time to get it because they are covered in 100% real chocolate, Steele's favorite. And they are bringing the healthy and actually tasty angle. That's right, seriously. They're so delicious, you won't even know that they're good for you. It's the tasty deliciousness from Built.com. Man, they have the fire. They have all of the good flavors: churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. We're not sure how Built does it, but the bars taste like candy bars. But they only have the delicious macros you need: 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And you don't need to wait around for it to get a box anymore. You can avoid Built.com if you want. You can still get it there. Head down to Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head down to your Walmart today. Go to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built, up to a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puff. And if you're near a Sam's Club, run down and get yourself a 13-bar box of the hit flavors: brownie, batter, and churro. Thank us later. That is the fire from Built and Built.com. Make sure you're checking it out.
This is David Harrison from the Locked On Commanders podcast, and this episode is brought to you by US Cellular. At US Cellular, they know phones are great, but they're not always great for us. Sure, they connect us to so much, but they also distract us from, well, us. The us that actually laughs out loud with each other instead of just texting it, that knows being in the same room doesn't always mean being together. So let's find us again by putting our phones down for 5 days, 5 hours, even 5 minutes. Join US Cellular in the Phones Down for 5 challenge. Find out more at uscellular.com/find us.
Make sure you continue to check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast Monday through Friday. I know we missed yesterday's episode. We will be back in full swing Monday through Friday, and make sure you hit us up on YouTube and across all platforms you find your favorite and hottest content. I alluded to maybe not mentioning Dmitry Orlov in my top under-the-radar trade deadline moves that are already paying off. But really, did we think Dmitry Orlov's move was going to pay off this much for Fantasy Cats and the Boston Bruins alike? Probably not. But the Boston Bruins seem to almost always make one of those sneaky under-the-radar moves at the deadline that end up working for them. And that's why they're a franchise who perennially wins and perennially puts up impressive seasons. Now, big-time bets. We're on the board here. It's been a little bit of an up-and-down episode. Hope you guys have been feeling it. My focus now is on Wednesday night's 3-game mini board. So realistically, the bets are staying short tonight. Chicago into Detroit, Minnesota Wild into the Winnipeg Jets, and we got the Anaheim Ducks into the Vancouver Canucks. And looking at this first glance, I wanted to just immediately bet all 3 teams at home on the money line. But looking at how, I don't know about the Chicago-Detroit situation. That's what I'm a little bit concerned about. The Detroit Red Wings have only 3 wins in their last 10 games against the Chicago Blackhawks. So that's why I wanted to stay away from the money line on that. And actually, with 7-3-0 record against the Red Wings in their last 10. And I know the Chicago Blackhawks have been bad over the last 2 weeks, but a 5-0 performance against a very red-hot Ottawa Senators team has me wanting to get a little bit spicy with the Blackhawks angle. And right now at +1.5 on the puck line, I hate to cop out on the puck line on the other end and take plus. This is going to be a 1-goal game. If not, go with Chicago on the puck line or on the money line. Chicago at Detroit on the puck line +1.5. -135 is a very good odd that I'm definitely willing to, at a 3-game board, probably just wager a decent chunk on straight up. But you can also include it in a parlay if need be. And moving over to my second game that I'm looking at, again, 3-game board, people, for Wednesday night. Check your latest from FanDuel and FanDuel Sportsbook for all the latest odds that we will tweet out. Minnesota at Winnipeg. Winnipeg needed to come out with a really good performance tonight after kind of an embarrassing letdown one against the San Jose Sharks. Just a previous night, 3-2 loss. This Winnipeg Jets team is good enough for me to be in striking distance for that top position in their division. And losing to the San Jose Sharks like that, only putting up 2 goals, I think there's going to be a big response from this team overall, but the Minnesota Wild are the hottest team in the NHL, not the Boston Bruins. And I'm not ready to bet against them. That's why I think this is going to be a very close, very playoff-like atmosphere for 2 teams who are duking it out in that division. Winnipeg 3 points back of the Minnesota Wild. I think this one is tight scoring. I think this one is playoff-like from the jump, and I've seen the line up and down for the total, but you know me, people. I have to go back to my bread and butter this season that's been making me some loot, and that's the over-under total. This one goes under the number for me. It's going to. That's what's going to happen, and when I scroll back up here to the last game between these two, 4-1 Minnesota under the number. I would lean Minnesota tonight, but I absolutely love the under. Hellebuck, 9-2 with a 9-11 save percentage and a few shutouts against the Minnesota Wild. I see a big bounce back performance from them, from Hellebuck, and I like the under. Take it up to 5.5, take it up to 6.5 if you want. It's going to be low scoring. I'm probably happy at 5.5, but I might tease it. My last minute odds and picks will be out. And very lastly, the Vancouver Canucks. I said it on Monday's episode. Rick Tocchet's influence is starting to show. And look, the Anaheim Ducks have a 7-2-1 record against the Vancouver Canucks over their last 10 games. And yeah, that makes me wary. Last time, Vancouver hung an 8 spot on this Ducks team. They know how to score against a very bad team. They're playing a lot better of late. Rick Tocchet has them going. Wins against Nashville and Toronto. Come on, guys. We have to jump on this side of things for the team that is playing a lot better hockey and that has a lot more talent right now. And I think Thatcher Demko, this is a prime time spot for a Thatcher Demko shutout. Thatcher Demko was at the top of my waiver wire ads. He's looked good in his 3 starts since returning from injury. Absolutely love this spot for the Vancouver Canucks. And I'm taking them on the money line, -190. That's my lock. Yeah, I know that's a heavy odd, but maybe you parlay it into something a little spicier. But Canucks on the money line, really feeling it at home. Good spot. This just seems like something they're going to dust away, the Anaheim Ducks. Recap very quickly. Chicago at Detroit. Give me the Blackhawks on the puck line, -135. Minnesota at Winnipeg. Give me the under. I'm taking it up to 6.5. Anaheim at Vancouver. Give me the Canucks on the money line, -190. People, we've done it again. Another solo episode. Thank you for joining me for this Hump Day special. Big time bets. All of the fantasy under the radar trade deadline moves that I like. And of course, the top injury news with Victor Hedman and O'Reilly on today's episode. And thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Make your second listen, Game to Game NHL, every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for tuning in for this Wednesday episode. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday. Good luck with all your bets out there. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, Prime members, you can listen to this Locked On podcast ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app today. Did you watch every NHL game last night? Of course not. That's impossible. So Locked On brings you Locked On Game to Game NHL. With Locked On Game to Game NHL, we take you inside every arena to every game and give you the Locked On local experts insight. And by the end, it's as though you were at every game. Find Locked On Game to Game NHL on the Locked On NHL feed and follow today. Locked On Game to Game NHL, taking you to every arena for every game with the local experts. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.